Hey guys, Paul Reddick here. We're going to go through the swing step by step. We're getting a lot of questions on the actual mechanics of hitting, so we're going to go through the swing step by step with Jay. We're also going to go through some of the hitting myths and actually show you how you generate power up from your feet, from your fingertips, and into the bat. Okay? So Jay, just take your stance. Okay? Now, what you do with your stance is up to you. Everyone's going to have a different style. Don't confuse the style of your stance with the efficiency of it, okay? You'll find some guys will be open, some guys might start even, some guys might even be a little bit closed. I don't like too closed of a stance because it will inhibit your ability to hit the inside pitch. But as far as stance goes, that's your style. You can start kind of wherever you want. Some guys like their hands high, some guys low, some guys in the middle. What matters is that when you get into your stride and you load up, that you're in the same place. And you'll see that even guys like Darryl Strawberry, who had really pronounced action with their bat, or Gary Sheffield, they all come back to the same place that a kind of a neutral hitter like Alex Rodriguez or Tony Gwynn will get to. So let's go through it. So Jay's all set up, he's got a good stance, head over belly button between the balls of his feet. Now, the one thing we're going to watch is the hands. We're not going to move the hands. Like we looked at in the Secrets of Hitters video, the hands do not move, okay? So Jay's going to take his stride. Now, after he takes his stride, what happens is the energy starts coming up the body. So it's going to start at the feet, up through the shins, knees, and all the way up the legs and up their body, right? The big fancy words are kinetic chain. Well, Jay's kinetic chain is going to start here, and it's going to deliver energy all the way up the body. So you don't want anything happening in the hands at this point, because there's no energy there. The energy is here. It's in the foot. It's transferring from the back foot to the front foot, okay? Now, the first movement what Jay is going to initiate here is once the weight goes to the front foot, the hip is going to start to turn. Go ahead, turn your hip. Now, a lot of people will say you squash the bug, but you don't want to initiate that movement from the back foot. You want to initiate that movement from the hip. So we'll go back, rewind a little bit, okay? So we're going to take our stride. Now, we're not initiating from the foot. That would be movement and power out of sequence. We want the sequence to come up, and the hip is going to turn, and that will in turn turn the back foot around. What you'll also see too is that when he hits the stride, go ahead, take your stride. When this heel hits the ground, the hip will turn, the back heel will come off. All right? So in other words, when he takes a stride, the heels will exchange energy from the front to the back, and you will see that the weight will go to the front foot, the back heel will come off the ground. But the movement is initiated with the hips. Okay? So now, go ahead, take your stride. Hips, 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 hips. Now, we're going to try and get his hips to turn as much as possible. That's where the power is going to come in. The more that the hips turn and the bat stays back, that's where you're going to have your power. So go ahead, turn your hips. Now, the front elbow is going to come up, come up, come up. Now, as he comes forward, he's going to drive the path of his bat up through the path of the ball. Now, most people will be taught to hit like this, but you're not going to drive the ball and make the ball go out into the field by swinging down on the ball. You're going to drive the ball by coming up and meeting the path of the ball with the path of your bat. Now, just to kind of show you, okay, Jay, as hard as you can now, you're going to pull down, pull as hard as you can. Now, I'm not doing much to hold him in place here. In fact, I can hold him in place with 2 fingers as he pulls, right? But now, come back here. Now let's set him up the right way. So the energy is going to come all the way up. Foot, hips, 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 turn, 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 turn. Take your elbow up. Now, pull, 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 pull. It's much harder to hold him in, okay? Because what he's doing when he's going down straight here, he's sending energy down, and he's not letting the energy travel up through his body. When guys start to get crazy with their hands, it's movement and it's power out of sequence. Everything has to happen in the order as the power and energy rushes up the body. So if you stride and take your hands back, you've displaced energy. Now you have energy in your hands and in your feet, and the energy kind of gets scattered. But if you take your stride and you let everything work up the body as it goes, then the power comes out from your body, into your hands, into the bat, and then into the ball. So let's go through it one more time. So Jay's going to stride. Now, the one thing I'll say, I'll make a little adjustment on Jay's. Now he's not hitting, he's just demonstrating. I would stride at a 45-degree angle. Almost all great hitters will stride at a 45-degree angle here. It allows your hips to open up a little bit more. Okay? So 45-degree angle, hips go, hips, 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 hips. Now, here's a hitting myth. We already talked about, do the hands move? The hands don't move. No stride hands back. We also talked about, do you swing down? You do not swing down. Okay? You let your hips dictate the bat path, and then obviously the path of the ball. But what you also have to understand is the next one, go ahead, stride. What a lot of guys will teach is tuck your elbow. Now, if you noticed on the swings before, A's elbow was tucked, but it wasn't because he tucked his elbow. It was because, go back, now stride, hips, 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 hips. And the elbow came in because the hips turned and it had nowhere else to go. So again, don't confuse what happens naturally because of the course of energy of the body as something that you have to initiate as movement. So people will say, well, how do you teach hands and how do you teach back elbow? You don't. You teach the stride, you teach the hips, and you teach the path of the ball, matching up with the path of the bat, and then just let everything else kind of happen naturally. As with anything, if you set it up right from the beginning, well, the same thing goes with pitching too. If you set up your feet right, you set up your hips right, there isn't much else that can go wrong, okay? Now, I want to show you one other thing. Jay, face the camera, like you're taking a swing. Now, close your stance a little bit. A little bit more, this way. No, I mean, yeah, close it so it's closed off. Now, let the bat go. Now, we're going to hold this bat, hold it right at your belly button. Now, we're going to take our stride. A lot of people talk about striding in towards the ball, that you stride to hit towards the ball, right? Big mistake, because I want you to watch what happens. Take your stride like you're going to stride in to hit the ball. Go ahead. Now, turn your hips, turn your hips, turn your hips, turn your hips. Now, we can mark a spot on the wall over here about how far his hips are going to go, okay? Now, come back, get back to your normal stance, your even stance, stride at 45. Now turn, 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 turn. Look at the difference in his hips. Now, he wouldn't be able to get that much because he'd have the bat obviously back, but just the difference that you can separate your hips from your hands and your shoulders, the more power you're going to generate. I think Mike Epstein said it best when he said, hitting is like fishing. Let me see that. If you've got to cast a fishing pole, when you send the pole back, the pole goes back, the line goes back, and the hook goes back. But then when you start the pole forward, the hook and the line are still going back. And then when the pole snaps straight, the hook goes flying forward. Well, the same thing happens here. Set it up, face the camera, Jay. So here, his body is the pole, this is the line, and this is the hook, right? So go ahead, step. So hips, 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 hips. So now, this is the pole snapping straight. So when the hips turn as much as they can't go out any further, and he sets this up right, guess what comes flying through with all the power it can generate? The bat. And that's when you start to generate real power at the plate. Now, what I'd suggest you do is, I don't want you to take my word for anything that we're saying. I want you to go back to the Secrets of Hitters video where we go step by step through all the different videos and look at the specific things and see how many things you can point out. Here's a big mistake that hitting coaches have made for years. They look at video and they isolate body parts and try and teach those body parts in the swing. That's not how it happens. You have to look at the swing as a whole and how power is generated from feet to fingertips, and power is translated up the body and into the bat. That's how you teach power hitting. You don't teach power hitting in segments or in body parts. Just like anything else, if you want to teach strength training, it's not always great to isolate. You have to integrate as well. So the hitting action takes place in the blink of an eye. And there's a lot of things in there that hitting coaches tend to think they see, but actually do not happen. So I suggest you check that video out, and then come back to this, and then see how many of those hitting myths that you can find in there, and also compare it to what we taught here today versus how the best hitters in the game have hit. Thanks.